Today's episode is with Sarah Collins, communication coach and consultant. Sarah works tirelessly to help business owners step into the spotlight through coaching and media training. Today we talk about what she does to help empower women to do this, but also her take on what it is to be a happy, thriving mum. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome to the Happy Thriving Mums podcast, the show that talks about the simple actions busy mums like you can take to prioritise your own happiness, health and fitness. And it doesn't stop there. This show also includes amazing stories from inspiring women who help others to be the best version of themselves. Because if you feel great, you thrive, and so does your family. Let's get started. Hello, Sarah. Welcome to the Happy Thriving Mums podcast. Thank you for being here.
No problem at all. Really pleased to be here.
Great. Well, I'm going to start, as I start with all my guests, with what I call the school run pitch. So my question to you, you heard of an elevator pitch, but this is a school run pitch. You've got to put about 45 seconds between drop off and dashing to your next stop when another parent asks, so what is it that you do again? What would you say to them?
Okay, so I would say I'm Sarah. I'm a communication and media coach. I spent 20 years in the television production industry, working for both ITV and ITN. I'm also a qualified life coach. What I do now is I coach ambitious female business owners, taking them through that journey from feeling, perhaps a lack of confidence or a fear of not knowing what to say or a lack of just knowledge of how things work when it comes to podcast, radio, TV interviews, and really work with them through coaching and media training to make sure that they are at that point where they're absolutely excelling in the spotlight, they're owning their voice, and they are there shining on that stage when they're given that chance.
That's amazing. What a great thing to do. I mean, it's such an inspiring thing to be able to enable people to kind of take on that leading light. Because I think quite often it's actually quite challenging to have that inner confidence to actually get up on a stage or on a podcast or just even on social media and kind of putting yourself out there in a way which conveys your message, but also is appealing to other people. It's quite challenging.
Very challenging, and I feel like as you were just talking there, I felt like you just described my journey. Essentially, because I have gone through, I was very painfully shy as a child.
Mm.
I did struggle to kind of own my voice, find my voice all the way throughout childhood, teenage years. And then I went into this industry where there are a lot of kind of bigger personalities around me. I had to find my voice.
Mm.
And so I think because I've kind of been there and obviously now with my own business, I feel like, it's just I've had that transformation myself. So now I'm helping, other people to be able to do that as well.
And I think being able to find your voice is so, so important. And I don't think you really realize that on a day-to-day basis. And it could be just in terms of kind of more simply being able to have a conversation with somebody about something that you feel awkward about, whether it's, I don't know, going to the doctors or even in a shop, if you're complaining about something. A lot of people struggle on that kind of more minute level to use their voice, as
Mm.
well as in like the business world or kind of trying to go out on stage, as we were saying, as an example. So I think it's such an interesting thing to do and to enable others to do as well. So I think it's fascinating. I'm really excited to hear more about it.
Well, I would say to that it is a really hard journey actually. I think if you're somebody who is quite naturally shy or maybe I don't like to use the word introverted, but
Mm,
if you're a bit more reserved, it can be quite difficult. But it's essentially about confidence building, but
mm.
it's also about, and I'm sure we'll go on to talk about this, it's about understanding communication, it's understanding how communication works, understanding your own communication style. And those are kind of all the things that have helped me along the way as well.
Yeah, and I know we've had conversations previously about communication styles, which I just found fascinating. So I don't know, maybe you'll go into that in a little bit, but we'll come back to that in a minute. So obviously, the aim of the Happy Thriving Mums podcast is to help mums feel like they can shine, which is a lot like what you
Hmm.
were kind of saying. So you're a mum yourself. Can you just explain to the listeners kind of what your situation is at home and kind of how this amazing venture has kind of evolved since becoming a mum, or whether it's kind of taken a little bit of time to get to where you are. So how has this all happened? What's the journey that you've been on? Big
Oh,
question, sorry.
well, just to paint a picture, so I have two girls, and they are 11 and 12. So we've been through the early years, and now we're coming
Mm,
into teenage years, which is a lot of fun. And essentially, I was working in the TV industry, went off and had my first daughter, and then when I look back at it, I really couldn't see that many mums in that industry who were working in a way that I wanted to work. So it was quite hard because I didn't feel like I had any real kind of role models that I could look up to as to, okay, I'm having children, but how is this going to work when I come back from maternity leave?
mm,
So that was kind of always hanging over my head. And then um, I then had the 16 months between my two. So I had kind of both of my daughters in quite quickly after each other.
mm,
So when I came back after the second one, there just wasn't the opportunity to have that kind of work-life balance. So I ended up going freelance. And then actually I was really lucky because I had several contacts, and they were able to kind of work around what I could do. And at that stage, and for a good, when they're small, you want to be around. So for a good kind of 5, 6, 7 years, I essentially worked when I could get childcare, which was in the school holidays.
mm,
So I would be around at term time, and then I would always kind of cover any holiday. So that was how I kind of kept my hand in that way. Um, and then in terms of how the business came about, so I then had a kind of fixed term contract role, and I was with a different organization for a few years, which, learned so much from doing that role. And it just came up that I had done my life coaching qualification. And when you're immersed in coaching, you see the world from a different perspective.
I bet, yes.
And so I was just starting to see things that, perhaps didn't align with where I felt I wanted to go. Um, and I could see problems arising, and I knew I had the solution to the problem. But to be able to do that, obviously, I needed to kind of step out of that TV industry, and potentially look at my options, look at possibly launching my own business. So I did that. I went in and I said, I'm not going to renew my contract. I want to launch my own business. And I actually took the holidays off with the summer holidays off with my kids, which was just absolutely priceless. It was amazing.
Yeah, so
And
special.
then, absolutely. And then I launched my business.
Amazing. I mean, there's a few things that you just said there which I found really interesting. Like, firstly, when you were saying about after having your children, you kind of look back to go to what you knew, but you couldn't see anybody else doing it in the way that maybe you'd hoped, or there was no kind of path that you could kind of follow, which had already been well established, which is so fascinating because it says a lot about that industry if there wasn't many people doing that, firstly. And then secondly, I love the fact that you then saw that this wasn't how you necessarily wanted to have your life. And therefore you decided, actually, I can see something else here, like you saying the problems, and I know the solutions, and that you were actually brave enough to kind of step out of what you knew and try to pave your own way, which I think is firstly, it's really brave and really inspirational. And secondly, how exciting, isn't it?
Mm.
Because I know when you do something new like that, it can feel really scary, but there is a great excitement to it to actually tread your own path. So I don't know if that's how you felt when you were doing it, but to me, from the explanation that you just gave, it just really rang true that that was kind of how you saw things.
Yeah, and I think what you just said there, so going back to, I think COVID has changed things a lot for most industries, hasn't it? But I
Mm,
think
definitely.
there, TV is definitely more family, can be more family friendly. Now I feel there's suddenly a lot more kind of parents working in it, over the
Mm.
last few years, in my experience anyway. Um, but just on your last point, it's really funny because I fully understand my communication style. I've recently done some further training in at DISC, which is a profiling tool, and my communication preference actually is that I don't like rapid change.
Okay,
And
right.
I struggle with change, and actually I realized that quite early on, even before I had done the coaching, because I was working in news environments,
Mm.
and I really struggled with, kind of breaking news, things changing at the last minute, and I knew
Mm.
that was something that I really had to work on. Now, obviously, I understand that's just the nature of, who I am.
Yeah.
So actually, when you described it there about, launching your own business, I mean that change for me and having to just deal with that and cope with that, that in itself was quite a lot to take on at the time.
Mm.
And actually, it's really, they say, don't they, kind of look at the small changes. And I've been reflecting recently on how in September, when I kind of launched my business, my diary was kind of blank. And
Yes.
I thought, right, this is my new normal. What do I have to do? Like, what are my days going to look like? And
Mm.
now, I mean, kind of 6 months on, my diary is full.
Yeah.
With all the different tasks that you have to do that come
Yes.
along with owning a business, the networking, the
Yeah.
reaching out to people, the business development, the weekly tasks that you do. And so even just for that, I feel really, I feel quite proud of myself for.
I think it's a big learning curve, isn't it, when you start your business? Because I think exactly what you said. I think when you first go into it, you think, oh, I'm going to be seeing clients and I'm going to be doing this. And actually, that's almost like one of the smallest parts of it because you're just setting everything up and you're making sure that you've got all your ducks in a row so that the rest of the client-based facing stuff is kind of like, it ends up being less than you actually imagine in the first place, I think. Or that's what I've found, anyhow.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy. Wow. For someone that doesn't like change or doesn't like rapid change, I think you've done quite a lot in a short amount of time. So tell us a bit more about your business. So you aim it for women and you're helping to support them to develop their communication skills as well as do you do that along with your life coaching or do you try and separate them? How does it work? And what kind of impact have you found that you've had so far?
Oh, great question. So I have been I took a long time to kind of listen to what people were saying and understand where I could help.
Mm.
And actually, what I've done now is I've taken my skills both as a television producer, so I was a senior television producer at both ITV and ITN, and also my life coaching qualification. And what I do is actually I work one-to-one with business owners and I incorporate both the coaching and the media training. So actually, it's not just straight coaching, it's not just straight media training, it's a mixture of the two. And actually, what we do is we work on kind of mindset, we get really clear on our messaging. The media training then comes in, making sure that we're ready and prepared for an interview. We might do a mock interview as part of that as well. And then looking at the strategy, how are we going to get you to that point so that your business is in a great place, ready for when the TV or the podcast comes knocking, and you
Yeah.
can happily say, yes, I'm there, I'm ready to do it.
So would you say that you have people who are kind of like really wanting to do these interviews or these podcast appearances, but just kind of feel that they don't have the skills themselves or the confidence, I guess, to kind of go out there and get their point across?
Yes, yes, it's a mixture of different things. So I work with women who come to me and say, I haven't got the confidence.
Yeah.
Or it might be, I don't know what to say. So actually getting your messaging right is absolutely key
Mm.
because, until you have that, you might be applying for, putting yourself forward for TV interviews or podcast interviews, but unless you have your messaging absolutely secure,
Mm,
then I think, that throws a lot of people off. And actually, they could be getting those interviews with just some tweaks to their messaging. And actually, one thing, I mean, I've worked on planning desks, both at GMTV, Good Morning Britain, and also Lorraine as well. And it was really interesting because I would receive loads of emails, but
yeah.
there were certain things that would stand out to me, that people really knew what they were talking about. And there's a kind of certain formula as well that the layout of the email and or the press release, and what that looks like. And so that's kind of all the things that I also teach, because I've been on the other side. I've been on that
Mm.
receiving the emails and knowing what stands out and knowing how someone might sound as if they are an expert in their field, because essentially that's what you're looking for. You're looking for someone that actually knows what they're talking about.
Wow. So there's so much to think about there, isn't there, from like both sides? I mean, the fact that you've got now both sides and you can help people to get, it's almost getting that step through the door, trying to position yourself as an expert, isn't it? And going on to those kind of speaking stages, whether it's on TV or wherever, because you might really know your stuff, but if you can't communicate that, it's
Yeah.
almost pointless, I guess, isn't it? And you're only as good as what you say. But on the flip side of that, I mean, I've worked with people who have got the gift of the gab and it can get them places, but then they don't have the minerals to back it up with what they're saying. I think it's a two-way thing, but I love the fact that you are empowering these women to kind of really step forwards and shine and just make sure that they are really the stars of their own show, I guess, isn't it? To really allow them to spread their message or to reassure us or whatever it is. Because I could think that's the thing with communicating as well, isn't it? They might be going out to explain a topic area, or there's so many, or they might be reassuring. There's different things that you have to convey when you're doing it. And I guess for them to be sure in that, and that comes in with your coaching, it can make them really thrive and move forward further.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting because I've heard a lot recently of people um kind of saying, what is my message, or what's the thing that's going to stand out, or and actually to be able to, I think to be able to stand out from a crowd it does take, it does take work, but
Mm.
actually, why did we start our businesses in the first place? We started our businesses because we wanted to have an impact in the world. We wanted to help other people. And actually, what better way than to do that on a bigger platform, something like a podcast or a TV interview, or, that's surely, of a business owner's dream, isn't it, to have that kind of interest. And and going back to what you said, um, I it's really funny because you see kind of thought leaders and you see experts, on doing interviews, and actually you don't realize that 5 minutes before the camera was on, they're kind of sat in their seat kind of shaking, really nervous, trying to gather their words. You don't see any of that. It's really interesting. Like some of the best people that come across brilliantly were petrified 10 minutes ago when you were sitting them in their seat. So it's I think the fear is always going to be there. But it's just how you cope with that and the
Mm.
strategies that you put in place to make sure that actually, do you know what? I am a bit nervous about this, but I'm going to do it anyway.
There's a lot to be said. There's a book, isn't there? Feel the fear and do it
Mm,
anyway. I think it's one
yeah.
of those situations. I always find I've taught for many years as a teacher, and in my head, I have always been an actor as a teacher because sometimes you go out and you've got these kids, and some of them can be lovely and some of them can be less lovely, but it's how you put yourself across. And if you go out there knowing that like you're a bit tired, you're a bit feeling a bit weak, and the kids will prey on that. So I think it is like how you put yourself out there. And it's always, I always think teaching is acting. You're always acting in some different way. Maybe in life, we're always acting a little bit.
Mm.
And it's just being able to kind of take on that role. And I think it's fascinating to think that some of the, like, I'm sure you can't name names, but some of the people that you kind of come across the most confident and like they know what they're doing and they've got no worries. I love the fact that they are also petrified inside. I think there's hope for everybody if that is the real case, isn't there?
Absolutely, absolutely, yes.
So now taking over the or thinking of the other side, thinking about yourself now. So as a mum, running a business can be really, really tough. So obviously we've spoken a little bit about communication. Maybe there'll be more to this in your answer here. But what to you is happy and thriving? And how does this come across personally and professionally?
Okay, so for me, thriving means that actually I'm being the best version of myself, and that means emotionally, physically, and mentally. I remember when the kids were smaller, and I think it is harder when they're smaller. I know you've got younger kids. Feeling so guilty about going to do an exercise
Mm,
class. It
going
was
anywhere.
the mum guilt was
Oh,
just so bad.
yeah, mum guilt is the worst. It's just
I
awful.
know, I know, and actually for a number of years I just didn't do it. I didn't do it because I just couldn't get over that. But actually over the years I've realized I have to do what puts me in the best position to be the best mum that I could be. And actually for me that is exercise. And I am quite strict with that because I think my husband would tell that would tell you that he knows when I haven't.
Oh, I'm exactly the same. My husband's the same. He's like, I think you need to go for a walk. Like, okay.
I literally get up in the morning and I say, I need to exercise today. And I think he just knows what that
Yeah,
means.
I think so. You can tell, I can tell if I haven't done anything, I'm not a good person. I don't know why. I just find it really is the thing that really helps me in every aspect of my life. I think it's so important.
Yeah, well, they say, don't they, kind of book it in as if it's a meeting in your diary. So I'm
Yes,
very visual. I'm a creative person, so I'm very visual. So everything in my written my physical diary is in different colors.
lovely, love it.
So my exercise is in like one set color, and that's one of the first things that goes in actually, because I'm like, no, non-negotiable, that's happening.
Good for you. Good for you. What else would you say? So apart from your exercise, is there anything else that you do maybe in your business to help you feel more kind of like that you are really, really rolling well with all of this?
I just think I think it's acknowledging when you need time for yourself. Um, I've put in kind of, you know, just tiny changes in my life, I think, especially since starting my business. So things like, just getting up a little bit earlier than the kids each day doesn't always happen. But on the days that it does, I always feel like the mornings just start that little bit calmer for me. I mean, it doesn't last that that way, as any mum would tell you, but just the fact that I've got up a little bit earlier actually really is quite helpful. Um, and then I guess, the only other thing I know we've spoken about this is so my daughter has got inflammatory bowel disease, and so thriving for us and thriving for her as and us as a family means eating well and eliminating kind of processed foods as best as we can because it's managed through meal planning and medication.
Mm,
So, making sure that actually that is quite a big part of my day, and it has been for the last number of years.
yeah.
So, as well as getting up early, I'm normally baking something from scratch, or I'll make a soup or just something, and that's just become a daily habit now, actually.
Mm.
And it's just something that we do as a family, to make sure that she can thrive, but we can also thrive as well.
And I love the fact that you do it together. I think that's a really powerful message to all of you because you're tackling this what could be a difficult situation, and I'm sure at times it can be challenging, but as a group and as a community coming together to support each other through it. And I think when you get to a point where something is ingrained in your life as a habit, you almost can't see it any other way, and that can be really quite helpful, I think, because you know that this is what I have to do. I've got processes in place, I've got structure, and actually this works for us. and it can be quite satisfying in many ways, but also it can just make those challenges that little bit easier, I find. I don't know about you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't see it any other way now. It's
Mm.
just our way of life, you know. But actually, I'm really, as much as yes, it is difficult at times. She's actually really well, so that's great.
Great, I'm pleased to hear
Um,
that.
and but actually, I've had a lot of learning that I've taken away from it as well. So, you know, just the fact that you know, what we should and shouldn't be eating.
Mm.
You know, I think we all know, but you know, it shouldn't take something like that to change. But actually, it did, and I had so many kind of amazing learnings from that experience. Um, you know, as I said, to hopefully kind of put her on the right path. And I love it when we like bake together and we
Oh, it's
make a
so
real,
fun, isn't it?
yeah, we make a real big thing of it because I want her to go forwards in life and know that, okay, you know, I can't eat some things, but actually that's not going to take the enjoyment away. And I can have fun baking and I can have
Yeah.
fun, you know, making things.
And she's then equipped as well with the skills to just be like, well, this is the norm, and I can just carry on with slight tweaks, maybe not the same as everyone else, but everybody's different and everyone has slight different preferences. I just know that for me, I need to do this, and that's really empowering for her, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. Yeah.
So we know as a mum and a mum with a business, there are many challenges. If I was to give you a magic wand and you could make a wish or change something, what would you choose to try and ease some of the pressures that you might feel?
Oh, that's such a good question. Do you know what? It's really funny because actually on the subject of food and what everybody's eating, I always said if I could, you know, if I could afford to get one thing in my life, to get some kind of chef.
Amazing. I think I quite like that too, actually. Uh,
You know, because I'm sure any mum listening to this would, you know, resonate with the ongoing you know, demand to keep producing food for your children.
oh my goodness. Yes,
And
I know
and
that.
all and you know and the meal planning, you know, the constant, you know, asking of what's for dinner tonight.
And then they've
Um,
eaten dinner and then they're still hungry. And you're just like,
exactly,
oh no.
exactly. So actually, I actually think if anything, I mean, that would help me thrive in every aspect of life, I think.
Oh yeah. Can you imagine? That would free up so much time, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I think I would include in that they would also buy all the food and do the shopping list as well and
Yes,
all of that stuff too.
absolutely,
I think that's
absolutely.
part of the package. But I love that. That's such a great idea. Brilliant. Well, we're coming on to the last couple of questions now. So I always ask my guests if they were to give some advice to the listeners on what they can do to be a happy, thriving mum, what would you suggest for them to try?
Okay, so so my tips, obviously being a communication and media coach, are going to be all around communication because actually, for me, that has made the biggest difference in my life. So actually, if I can provide tips on those bases, then perfect. So I would say my first one is around just watching how you're communicating with yourself. So, you know, we all know about kind of inner chatter. And you know, just be aware of that inner chatter. There's that wonderful saying, isn't there? Kind of talk to yourself as if you were your own best friend, you know. So
Oh, yeah.
if you wouldn't talk to your best friend like the way you talk to yourself, then something's got to change. So, you know, if you're having thoughts, those internal thoughts, you know, then just acknowledge it, recognize it, think about whether there's any evidence for it. And if there's not, then try and reframe it into a more positive thought. And actually that's been quite a, you know, a life changer for me. Um, and, you know, just we're so busy, aren't we? It's
Mm,
like we're so busy. Um, and so hard on ourselves sometimes. So I think if we can just, you know, just acknowledge that inner chatter and try and reframe it, then that's definitely something, you know, worth doing, I think. And then the next one is, again, because it had such a difference for me, but understanding your communication style. So, you know, I used to um, go around thinking, oh, why do I do things like that? Or why do I? And then when I understood my communication style, everything changed. It's like the way you communicate with other people changed. My relationships with my friends, even my, my immediate family really changed. And I understood that they had different communication preferences to me, and that's okay. So I would definitely seek some help to kind of do that, because that was really, really quite eye-opening, and improved a lot for me. And then the
Can
third
I
thing
just
then,
check
oh, sorry.
with the idea of communication style? Can you just explain to the listeners what a communication style is, just so that they're clear on what that idea consists of?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can only go by kind of what I've been trained in, but my training is I'm accredited in the DISC profiling tool. And what that means is you would kind of complete a whole questionnaire, and it would come out as kind of one of four profiles. So there's the D, the I, the S, and the C. And I won't go into too much detail,
No,
but
no.
but essentially, it's things like you're either people orientated or you're task orientated. It might be that you really get a lot of energy from being around other people, or you might be more reserved. And I could go on and go on because I absolutely love it.
Yeah,
But it's really interesting. You start kind of clocking who is which profile. When you're out and about, it's really
fascinating.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. You'd be like, oh, you.
Yeah, but it also helps you communicate with those people, with those people and
Mm,
what their communication preference is. So
yes.
one of my daughters, I think, is a different style to me. And she used to say to me, when I'm doing her hair, I'm sure mums with daughters who go dancing have this problem all the time. And it'll be, but my hair's got to be, it's got to be perfect. It's got to be perfect. And I always used to say to her, it doesn't have to be perfect. And then I realized actually she sways more towards a different profile than me. And for her,
Yeah.
actually, accuracy is very important. So then I stopped saying it, and we stopped having this battle. So it's just small tweaks like that
Mm.
make such a difference.
That's so interesting. It's I think it
Yeah.
can. You can be just really gentle in different approaches, which just makes a world of change.
Absolutely. And then I think my third tip is just that understanding that flow of communication. So the whole purpose of communication is that we make another person feel important. We all want to be able to, we all want to feel important. And what we naturally do is we speak in a conversation with the intent to reply. Whereas actually speaking and having those conversations, but listening to that person, and then, what you're saying, make them feel important.
Mm.
And then actually it changes the communication and the conversations you'll have. So that's kind of my top three tips.
I love that. So it's take care with the inner chatter.
Yeah.
Secondly, know your communication style and also other people's, and that can really help with the communication. And thirdly, making people feel important through conversations.
There's a brilliant quote from Maya Angelou, and she says, people will always forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So that's the basis of a conversation. You're trying to make that other person feel important.
Yes, I love that quote. That was written on the wall of a place that I used to work, and it was just there every day, and you'd walk past it. And I think it's so true. And I also remember, I think I was listening or saw a interview with Simon Cowell, and he always said that that's one of the things that I think his dad taught him, that make sure that you make other people feel really
Mm.
important because they respond so much better to you. And also, as you said, everybody wants to feel important, don't they? It's kind of
Yeah.
it's a really easy thing to do, I think, when you think about it. And it's a nice thing to do as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
So,
and just be curious about other people, because people might think, oh, but how do you make that person feel important? But actually, it's
mm,
be curious about them. If they're talking about something, ask questions about it.
yeah,
Just making sure their voice is being heard.
definitely. I think quite often people don't get the opportunity to get their voice heard. And I think that's why what you do is such fascinating and important thing, and an amazing business idea that you kind of seen that there's a real need for. And so I've really enjoyed hearing about what you do today. You're clearly very, very passionate about it. And I love those tips to help people to kind of like move forward with their communication. I love that. I'd love to go into the communication profiling, the disc profiling a
Mm.
little bit more. That just sounds so maybe we'll do that another episode. But but no, thank you so much for joining me today, Sarah. Please, for the last question is, where can everybody find you? Where is the best kind of platform or website so that they can see all the wonderful things that you do and get in contact?
Brilliant. So I am on LinkedIn and on Instagram. So LinkedIn, Sarah Collins, communication coach. And then also Instagram, you can find me at Sarah Collins _ coach consultant. And come and say hello, because I love hearing from other people and having conversations. So come and start a conversation with me.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Sarah, and have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
rest of day.
And you take care.